But what I can tell you is that this president is a negotiator and a businessman. We're going to grow our way out of this with American businesses, American industry, and American oil and gas.
Listen, well, you and I are both fellow fans of history, and I've made the comparison to the Roman Empire myself, so I appreciate the comparison. But before we go, I do want to ask about the cuts to Medicaid, because as you know, many of your Republican colleagues, including in the Senate, Susan Collins, Josh Hawley, are saying this is going to hurt people. It's going to close rural hospitals. Are you comfortable with those significant cuts to Medicaid?
Look, I came from a family where it was a broken home that I was adopted by my grandparents. My grandparents were extremely dependent upon Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and when my grandfather had quadruple bypass, we were dependent upon disability to try and get by. We were that lower to middle class family. My grandfather was a welder, my grandmother was a stay-at-home mom and cosmetologist. I know the importance of Medicare and Medicaid. No, I do not want to see any impacts to that. That's why I actually, in the 118th Congress, signed on to Beth Van Dyne's bill, which actually protect and save Medicare and Medicaid. So, no, I'm not happy about the cuts. I want to see what the final product is after the debates, but it's one of those things where we want to continue to serve and protect the American people.
President Trump's domestic policy agenda hitting a major setback. The Senate parliamentarian, essentially the chamber's rules referee, struck down key provisions of his so-called big, beautiful bill, saying they don't meet the strict standards to pass by a simple majority of 51 votes. That includes major changes to Medicaid. And it puts the president's deadline to sign the bill by July 4th, just a week from now, of course, in jeopardy. CNN's Jeff Zeleny is at the White House this morning for us, I hope. Jeff, there you are. President Trump held an event to make his case, to try to push this bill through. But what are you learning? Because there is a lot of jostling going on and a lot of concern, particularly among Republicans.
Hey, good morning, Sarah. We are here at the White House. President Trump is as well, and we are learning he is planning to spend the weekend here in Washington, a rare weekend in Washington, because he wants to stay close to the Senate as he is urging and pushing Senate Republicans to pass his sweeping tax and spending bill. It's really the signature piece of legislation that really touches every corner of American lives. There's no question, though, there are some hurdles. You mentioned the referee in the Senate. That's the Senate parliamentarian. They are ruling that many of the key provisions are out of order. So it's back to the drawing board for some of these key provisions on Medicaid spending that really have a deep impact on rural hospitals and many other programs. But the president had an event here at the White House late yesterday. He had this to say about any Republican holdouts.
I shouldn't say this, but we don't want to have grandstanders where one or two people raise their vote. We don't know, and they do it to grandstand. That's all. Not good people. They know who I am, who I'm talking about. I call them out, but we don't need grandstanders.
What may be grandstanding to the president are actually deep policy differences to many of the Republicans in his own party. The bottom line is right now Senate Republicans do not have the 50 votes they need because of some of those key provisions on Medicaid cuts. You can see right there. Several other things are also in this, but the debt ceiling increase, that is one huge part of all of this that is needed. But the reason for all of these cuts to many safety net programs is to find enough revenue to extend the Trump tax cuts. So that is what is at issue here, Sarah. So that's why it's back to the drawing board trying to make some fixes on this legislation.
That piece out of Missouri, out of the state of the Republican who's kind of raising the loudest ruckus about this, and can you mark the moment where you have this many Republicans basically defending a safety net program?
Sure, and I think those are the key words, a safety net program, Audie, and I think that we need to get to a point where hopefully those individuals are prospering and successful and have the economic means not to necessarily rely on Medicaid as their means of getting health care. There is concern among Republicans, as you've said, because they recognize that those are voters. Increasingly, those are individuals who've left the Democrat Party and gone to the Republican Party. And so there is a reason why you see this debate playing out the way it is. And the frustration is now with the Senate parliamentarian, an unelected bureaucrat in Washington, D.C., and there's a move afoot by people like Senators Roger Marshall, Tommy Tuberville, and Marsha Blackburn to impose a term limit or fire that person because they've made other changes to Medicaid, specifically as it relates to illegal immigrants in this country and whether or not they can access those services.
Let me add to your point, just because Senator Mark Wayne Mullen also raising concerns about the Senate parliamentarian along those lines. Here was their take.
It seems politically motivated, and I have a problem with that. The parliamentarian is not supposed to be in politics, and I'm not accusing her of that. I haven't heard her explanation of it. I want to see it. Before I just take this decision, I want to see how she got to the decision.
When you're blaming the parliamentarian,
Rob says term limits and throw the bums out.
I've also heard blaming the Congressional Budget Office. I mean, Washington is filled with unelected bureaucrats who are making decisions. This is just a decision that Republicans don't like. And before, I mean, this July 4th deadline is something that the president has constructed. It's not real. Right. He just wants it done. The Senate's slow, and this is why the Senate is slow. They work on the details. They talk a lot, and things get hammered out. And the parliamentarian didn't make up these rules. These are the Senate rules. Right. And she's just requiring that they follow them. And law. Right. And so that's what's going on here. When you're attacking the process, it's because you've kind of run out of other arguments.